Hello, and welcome to another live stream. It's Monday. Happy Monday. I hope you're all doing well today and enjoying your week so far. Yes, we are live on YouTube, Twitch, X, Instagram, all of those platforms. And in today's live stream, I'll be covering a wide range of topics, including the Illinois transition from BioTrack to Metric for its cannabis seed-to-sale tracking system. We'll be talking about cannabis prices in Michigan and how they are continuing to fall. We'll be looking at our neighbors in Iowa who are reportedly looking to double. That's right, double the number of cannabis licenses available. And though that might sound impressive, we'll look into the fine print and show you just how impressive that number will double to. We'll also be talking about the potential for changes in Illinois hemp policy, the latest cannabis operators leaning into hemp, and stories that make you wonder, legal weed is full of poison? We'll be looking at an interview that I saw earlier this week, as well as some other stories that I've seen that make you ask that question. All that and more in this live stream of
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo. The Cole Memorandum.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memorandum.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo is what allows this whole thing to go on.
I mean, you have to respect the memo.
Hey, this is Tommy Chong, and you're listening and watching The Cole Memo.
All right, and if you're catching this later and you're wondering, how can I tune in to these motherfucking live streams? I really want to catch it live, and it's awesome when you tune in live. You can comment below, and we can display your comments. I see some people are tuning in. Feel free to drop your comments. We will acknowledge them. And once again, I'll get back to your question, pretend listener out there. If you're catching this later after the live stream and you're wondering, how the hell do I tune in live? The best way is to head on over to colememo.com/YouTube and subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you'll never miss a stream. This podcast is also available for streaming on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and other streaming platforms. So, hey, Brandon, as you can see, Brandon just dropped a comment. Good to see you too, Brandon. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Cole Memo. This should be an exciting one. I'll be right back after this message.
Sun-Drenched Farm is the manifestation of my dream to be able to provide for my family through offering natural alternative forms of healing and wellness, the same forms that I've been so fortunate to experience on my journey in healing from Lyme disease. With in-house cultivation, solventless extraction, and final product manufacturing, we're able to offer the highest quality product that you can find now at sundrenchedfarm.com.
In case you didn't know, I've been sharing new episodes over on Patreon. You can find them at colememo.com/Patreon. One of these episodes features an interview with a smoke shop manager who sells sex supplements, kratom concentrate known as 7-hydroxy, hemp-derived cannabinoids, a snortable stimulant called booger sugar, pills mimicking Adderall, and something called gas station heroin. Sounds tasty. I want some. And soon, I'll be releasing an episode featuring veteran reporter Ray Long from the Chicago Tribune, who literally wrote the book on Madigan. I've got it somewhere over here. I'll grab it here in a second. It's called The House That Madigan Built. It's a book that details the rise and fall of the legendary Michael Madigan, arguably one of the most influential figures in Illinois politics. I'll also be releasing an episode with a woman who works to block or even roll back cannabis legalization in some states, which is definitely always an eye-opening conversation, having discussions with people like that. I also have more episodes on the legal prostitution industry as it exists today in the United States of America. Those will be coming out soon. I just dropped another one recently at colememo.com/sex. Here's a brief taste of what you can expect in that series. Is there any crazy stories?
Nothing too crazy for me. Somebody came in recently and asked me to pee in a cup.
It's Cole Preston. This is Bella's Hacienda.
It's a licensed brothel in the state of Nevada. Let's go inside.
I just like stood in the shower and peed in the cup.
And that's it?
Yeah.
So they said, so
I just want to see you pee in the cup.
And did they ask for the cup, or?
You can watch my entire series on the legal sex industry as it exists today in Nevada at colememo.com/sex.
Yeah, so yes, that is a crazy series. Yeah, once again, the episode I'm super excited to be releasing soon. I'm realizing this might not be displaying correctly for you. It looks like it's mirrored. Ray Long wrote this book, The House That Madigan Built. He's been covering Illinois politics for the last 40 years, and I recently had the opportunity to connect with him to discuss his work and his book. So again, if you want to support this show and have access to new episodes before the general public, you'll want to go to colememo.com/Patreon. It's just $3 a month to become a member. Quick heads up, if you're on an Apple device, I recommend signing up from a computer or a non-Apple device, because Apple adds extra fees on top of the very fair $3 a month, which I ask for in order to do this work, and it's a typical big tech move, so I guess I shouldn't be surprised. All episodes eventually go up for free on public feeds, but again, if you'd like early access, become a member at colememo.com/Patreon. That's colememo.com/PATREON, and we are almost to the amazing stories. I just lastly would like to say that this show is brought to you by listeners like you. If Patreon's not your thing, you can make a one-time, monthly, or yearly contribution of your choice at colememo.com/support. And if you can't support financially, it's totally fine. One of the best ways to support this show and to help my show get in front of more eyes is to smash that like button. Share it with your friends, or leave a positive review from wherever you're listening from right now. And if you have the time to hop on over to Apple Podcast or Spotify or whatever you prefer, give us 5 stars there as well. That would make a huge difference to me. So let's dive right in to our first story of the day. I don't know if you heard about this one. An SUV smashed that like button. No, I'm just joking. An SUV crashed into a marijuana dispensary. Let's check out this report on the subject.
And breaking overnight in Jefferson Park, this SUV slammed through the front window of this dispensary early this morning. You can see it sitting in the middle of the store. Chicago police say thieves broke into Cannabis at Milwaukee and Lawrence around 2 this morning. Officers told our crews on the scene that the storage area where products are kept was not broken into. It does not appear the thieves got any money either.
Okay, so we won't watch the Cubs beginning their series. We'll save that for another episode. Somebody commented and said, "Good day, peeps. I hope you're all safe and stoned." Once again, we are live. So if you want to comment below, we can display your comment. I'll also give you the ability to call into the show if you'd like to do that here in just a bit. But yeah, if you haven't smashed that like button and subscribed to the channel, please do so. Somebody asked, wait, were they trying to rob it? I think so. Yeah, that's what I remember reading about with regard to this subject. It sounds like they were trying to rob the dispensary. You don't get a lot of that here in Illinois. So, there's a first for everything. That's not the first time, though. I will say that something like that has happened in Illinois. I'll reiterate, you don't see much of that in Illinois. However, it has happened in the past, and the way that it happened, I'll have to try to find the story because I'm going off the top of my head right now. But if I recall correctly, somebody actually cut into a wall and entered in some security code. This is not the story that I just covered, by the way. This is right after we passed adult use into law. Somebody tried to break into a dispensary, and I haven't heard much of what happened since then. But I think I remember some of the commentary around the issue was saying that it was probably an inside job. So, Yeah, I don't know exactly what they're trying to do, but I would guess they were trying to rob the location. Not completely sure. Um, Somebody asked, the attempted thieves don't read Illinois law. I'm curious what you mean by that. I'm guessing because it's locked up or something. I'm not sure what you mean by that. So this next story that I am going to cover is, look, this is just off the police blotter, so who knows what's true. These are all allegations from the police. This is all allegedly, right? But the Paxton blotter recently shared this story, which you can almost read through all of the fucking ads. See, this is, I don't, yeah, I can't even, how do we, there we go. Okay, so Tommy L. Sessions was having a session, it seems, in his vehicle because he was arrested for illegal transportation of adult use cannabis, operating a vehicle with a suspended registration during a traffic stop. And so the traffic stop was conducted after Paxton police allegedly saw Sessions fail to dim his headlights as required when driving a 2005 Chevrolet Tahoe with a suspended registration. So already off the top, lots going on here. The guy's driving with his brights on. Apparently he failed to dim them. He's got a suspended registration. According to this article, police had earlier received a notification of a vehicle with a suspended registration from the city's Flock safety license plate reading cameras. So I'm covering this story because, folks, you if you're going to break laws, the old adage is break one law at a time. During the traffic stop, police noticed a strong odor of cannabis coming from the vehicle. Sessions admitted that he had just ended a session. Sorry, I'm just using his last name. It's not funny. Sessions admitted that he just smoked cannabis in the vehicle and told police that the used blunt was in the vehicle's center console. Police then searched the vehicle and found 2 baggies containing 52.2 grams of cannabis, and the vehicle was impounded by police under city ordinance. So I'm guessing, based on this headline, he was charged with unlawful transportation of cannabis. I don't know. It's unclear to me if he was a medical cannabis patient. But again, the lesson here is, folks, just be careful out here. So some comments based on our last story. Someone said, so I know that a few of the robberies that have occurred at dispensaries, the one by me was hit twice. I think it's just not covered by media. Had to know people to hear about it. Oh, that's interesting. And earlier I asked a question. Somebody commented, the attempted thieves didn't read Illinois law. I asked what they meant by that, and they said, that was in regard to the mandatory way that buildings must be built out in order to be marijuana dispensaries in the state of Illinois. Okay, I get that, where they've got the reinforced steel walls or whatever the fuck. And Cannabis Critique, man, has a brilliant comment here. With LED lights, I feel like everyone always has their brights on. Thank you. I feel like I am a relatively young man. I know I'm getting a bit older, but I feel like I can't fucking drive at night anymore. Am I alone? It doesn't seem like I'm alone based off of Cannabis Critique's comments. And I even found this subreddit. Let me see if I can find it. It's like headlight. Looks like there's one called Fuck Your Headlights. But that's not what I was thinking of. Oh, no, I think it is what I'm thinking of because I am a member of it. The description for this Reddit community is blinded by those ultralight low beams? Join the club. It's not just aftermarket bulbs and misalignment. Most new OEM lights pose a threat. I don't know what needs to happen here, but Jesus fucking Christ. I like getting to the point where I have to like put my hand in front of, like, I just feel like I can't drive at night anymore. And I feel like it's only getting worse. Brief tangent from our drug policy discussion. I feel like it's only getting worse because as you continually get blinded by these fucking lights, your eyes are like struggling to ever recover. So thank you for that comment. Somebody said, In my day, we just put our feet through the bottom of the car and just ran with the car around us, and we had candles and seashells for headlights. Yabba dabba doo. Somebody else said, gotta wear your sunglasses 24/7 now. Yeah, I don't know if there's like, I feel like I've read online there's like night glasses that like truckers use or something. It's not like I'm driving a lot at night, but god damn, it feels unsafe sometimes when I'm driving at night. And you know, the worst is when you see those people coming and you give them like a gentle flash of the light and then they show you what their brights really are. You're kind of like, damn, dude. So you give them a little flash and they're like, boom, motherfucker, I don't even have my brights on. It's like, shit, dude, my bad. Didn't realize your lights were powered by the soul of Jesus Christ. I mean, wow. Yeah. I'm glad I'm not alone. I'm glad I'm not alone on this one. So I've got an interesting question for this next story. What the hell are these people talking about? So the headline is, and I'm honestly curious, I know that sounded like a smart-ass comment, Illinois lawmakers push to lower medical cannabis tax with a new bill. I gotta acknowledge this comment, pretty funny. The Orion's belt headlight package. Yeah, absolutely. It's like a fucking shooting star heading right at you. So I keep seeing this story pop up, and I've not seen people in the cannabis space talk about it. And frankly, I was hesitant to talk about it as well because I just don't know what the hell is going on with this bill. I don't know what it means. Because to be candid, I thought this was already the case. So let's read this story. Illinois lawmakers have proposed a bill that would change the tax code to reflect other prescription drug taxes. The bill would amend the Retailer's Occupation Tax Act to recognize cannabis as a prescription and non-prescription medicine and drugs as long as the buyer purchases it from a dispensary and has a medical cannabis card. So what I think this is, and I don't know for certain, but I think this would amend the issue that we have with, not being able to use your medical card at all dispensaries. It was a bill proposed by Illinois Representative Sonia Harper on January 10th, and the potential law, aka bill, was referred to the House Rules Committee on January 28th, and if signed into law, the changes would take effect at the start of 2027. So, I don't know. This kind of goes back to a discussion I had on a recent episode where I was a little confused as to what happened. Apparently, a person went to an adult use dispensary. There was some sort of glitch, and their medical allotment was affected by their purchase at an adult use dispensary. And they claimed that they confirmed this by going to another medical dispensary, asking what their allotment was at, and it matched up with what the adult use dispensary said their allotment was at after the purchase. So to me, that was an indication that this did deduct from their medical allotment. But what didn't occur was, they weren't charged at that 1% tax. In other words, sort of what this bill is talking about, making the case, making the law, if you will, in Illinois. And so I talked to a lot of different people, and they confirmed to me, they're like, no, Cole, there's no technical barrier from that happening. The legal barrier is twofold. A, you have to have a medical license, and B, with that medical license comes the ability to sell the cannabis at a lower tax rate, provided that the individual has provided proof of their medical card. And so I guess this is just like amending the, as they say, Retailer's Occupation Tax Act to recognize cannabis as a prescription and non-prescription medicine and drug, as long as the buyer purchases it from a dispensary and has a medical cannabis card. So that's kind of cool. We've been talking about this potentially getting addressed for a while, and now it seems that it is. So cool stuff. Cool stuff for sure. I'm curious what you all think about it. Once again, we are live, so if you want to comment below, we can display your comment. If you haven't already, smash that like button, just like that vehicle did to the dispensary. Smash it, and grab whatever. Someone commented and said, the system does not care about patients. It just cares about money. I worked at a dispensary, and to get around the fact that we had to charge recreational taxes and then discount the sale. Yeah, and that's the one thing that I have heard is pretty commonplace. You can go to an adult use dispensary and they will offset the price by 30%. I don't know exactly how that logistically works. It seems like they're just like swallowing the the price, but definitely, an interesting one. So we're going to be covering a few different stories here in a moment. We'll be talking about Michigan prices falling even further. We'll be talking about is legal weed full of poison? We'll be talking about a few different stories, including one with a really interesting investigative journalist that I've not seen many people talk about. So I'll be sharing that interview with the investigative journalist here in a moment. But let's talk about Michigan prices falling, and then we'll talk about the transition, the Illinois transition to metric seed to sale. So I saw this story a while ago. It's been a while since I've done a show, but I wanted to make sure to cover it because I find it interesting. So let's move this over here. The headline is in the Detroit Free Press, as Michigan prices fall, business owners point to other threats to their survival. The Michigan recreational marijuana business owners who gathered for a quarterly public meeting of the state's Cannabis Regulatory Agency on Wednesday. Again, this was written on March 19th, so this was a while ago. They said unfair fines, falling prices, and the illicit products showing up in the market are threatening their economic survival. The business owners and other industry stakeholders who spoke during the 1.5-hour-long meeting, held both in person in Lansing and virtually, called for more effective enforcement and regulatory reform to stabilize the industry. Their comments come as the price of marijuana flower continues to decline, dropping to its lowest level of $65.21 for an ounce of adult use marijuana in Florida, making it hard for businesses to make a profit. Cannabis companies that use undisclosed substances in their products to save money can also undercut the price of other sellers, making it tougher for businesses to compete, industry stakeholders said. I believe this is a practice called inversion, and we discussed it in my episode that I did with reporter Zach Huffman, who covers Michigan cannabis and so much more. So it's interesting to see these prices falling. I mean, I just saw, this is sort of unrelated, but I just saw yesterday or recently that you can buy a pound of THCA hemp, I'm saying that in air quotes, for $500. So that's a pound. You heard me right. A pound for $300. I used to buy an ounce for almost like $280, $260 back in the day. So super interesting to see. As I said earlier, it sounds like the average price of an ounce is $65. I think I saw an ounce of THCA flower goes for like $50. Now, I don't know how good of a quality that product is, but I'm just saying, people are out there. There was actually recently a person that hosts he's a co-host rather of a cannabis show called The Dales Report. He bought a quarter pound, I think it was for like $150, and he bought it because, well, he's on a cannabis show, so I think his intent, he said, was to test the product, send it to a few different labs and see like what's it test out at, does it have contaminants, and I've not heard back on that yet, but he did post pictures of the product that he received online, and it didn't look bad, and he said it didn't smell bad either, which is kind of interesting to hear, buying a fucking quarter pound for $150. So it'll be interesting to see. I'll definitely do a follow-up whenever they share the test results. And we'll be talking a little bit more about that sort of concept where you buy cannabis and then have it retested. It's something that I've worked with journalists in the state of Illinois to do. It's something that people have done in different states, and it's something that I hope continues to happen because it's a really interesting audit, for lack of better words, on cannabis quality. So everybody's been talking about this. This report from the Detroit Free Press continues at the same time as all of those other things we were talking about, prices falling, potential inversion, stuff like that. A new tax on cannabis products recently proposed by Governor Gretchen Whitmer to fund Michigan roads adds obstacles for business owners. A cannabis attorney called that proposal a very serious and existential threat at the meeting. So it doesn't sound like it's got any support with regard to, doesn't sound like anybody is supporting that. So again, some of the concerns that were raised is the cratering price of marijuana flower, fines that threaten profitability, illicit products apparently still being an issue, which is interesting because, Michigan has a very open cannabis market. And so for the most part, it would seem like they've made it easier to participate in their legal market than to not. As a consumer, it's super easy to find a dispensary. The prices are super low, so you almost feel silly not going there. And as a business owner, super easy to get into business. You almost feel silly not getting into the legal business. It seems like that's why you don't see the hemp issue really in Michigan. People... Oh, and I just got a little correction here. Varel bought his quarter pound for $199, so a bit more expensive than I thought. But yeah, going to be interesting to see what they come back with. And that's the handle of the person I was talking about. His name is Anthony Varel. He's a co-host on the Dales Report. And, like I say, I think what they're doing is super interesting, especially with regard to the purchase of the quarter pound and getting it tested. I even offered to pitch in some change on that because, testing ain't free and it isn't cheap either. So before we move on to the next story, I'm just going to acknowledge this comment. I hadn't read it yet, but they said, why would anyone read a big company spending millions to sell cannabis in Illinois, pay for distillate from cannabis when you can convert CBD and get the same thing? Illinois law allows it. Yep. We've talked about this on the show in the past. Illinois has a long-standing variance that allows you to buy hemp. Essentially, you can only use it in your extracts and infused products, so think edibles and vapes. I've personally seen data that indicates that at least one cannabis producer attributes, and it's a big one, a big cannabis producer in the state of Illinois, attributes, I think the number was 60% of their annual crop coming from hemp. So that means like 40% of the rest is what they just send as flour and other products like that. So smokable flour mainly. But yeah, super interesting to think that most of the vapes and edibles that you get probably have hemp in it. And people aren't necessarily hiding this. I've shown in the past, for example, that like if you get a package of Incredibles, not to give free advertising for these companies, but just an example that I've personally seen. If you look on the back of an Incredibles package from the dispensary and you look at the ingredients for that package, it will show you that hemp extract was used in the making of that product. So definitely, yeah, there's hemp in the dispensary. No secret there, though many people are not aware of that being the fact. So I do appreciate you bringing that up. Okay, so our next story, speaking of inversion and diversion and things like that, is from my website, colememo.com. The headline is, Illinois begins transition to metric for cannabis tracking. BioTrack shutdown set for July 1st. This is probably one of the shortest articles I've ever written. So in case you didn't know, on May 16th, Metric announced that Illinois intended to award the company a contract for its cannabis seed to sale tracking system. A press release from the state of Illinois on February 4th, 2025, confirmed that the state will transition to Metric this summer. And according to new implementation documents shared by Metric, available now on colememo.com, the phased rollout will begin April 1st, 2025. And that's no joke. That's tomorrow. It starts tomorrow. With testing labs and transporters, followed by cultivators, infusers, and dispensaries in late April and May. I want to give a big shout out to my industry source who gave me a heads up that this information was coming out. I'm pretty sure that I was one of the first to break the news on this, besides the state themselves, right? So, licensees will receive state-funded RFID tags with ordering available April 28th. According to Metric, details of the tag ordering process will be communicated to each licensee over the next few weeks, and in-person and virtual trainings will be provided. So, once again, on April 1st, we'll have credentialing open for testing labs and transporters. On April 25th, credentialing will open for all license types. On April 28th, RFID tag ordering begins, and I'll have some comments about that here in a moment. But to continue, May 25th, all testing must transition to Metric, and June 27th, full market migration deadlines. So basically, all licensees should be migrated to Metric and operational by June 17th. And July 1st is when the state will officially shut down the BioTrack tracking system. And once again, if you go to colememo.com to read this article, I'll have the link to this article in the show notes. You can actually read the implementation document yourself. I always think it's nice to just give you I think they're called the primary source documents. So definitely check that out. There's more information that I covered in that little segment / article. So if you want more details, that's where you can find them. Okay, well, it's time to move on to our next story. We're growing closer and closer to our headline stories, which are about cannabis being filled with poison. You guys like my echo? We are live right now, so make sure to comment below if you haven't already. Smash that like button. Let me make it so that y'all can, yes, I just said y'all, call into the show if you'd like. Here in a moment, that'll be available for you. So if you didn't know, it's colememo.com/live. If you really want to say something and you want to hop on, it's easy to phone in. You don't literally phone in. You just go to colememo.com/live, and then on whichever device you're on, you just hit the click here to join me on the live stream button. You can choose whether or not you want your camera on, and you can ask me questions, or if you want to make a comment and say, fuck you, Cole, I don't appreciate how you cover things, then that is, I don't want to say that's welcome, but you could probably do that. Okay, so it's time to talk about Iowa. Short story out of Iowa. Let's, very, very short story out of Iowa. Let's watch this one. Here we go.
A bill to allow more medical cannabis dispensaries in Iowa is moving forward tonight. Right now, only 5 medical cannabis licenses are available in the state. If passed, that number would double, allowing 10 total licenses, allowing for 5 new medical dispensaries to open in Iowa.
Wow, Iowa. Wow. So many, you're doubling the licenses. Like I said, that headline sounded much more impressive than it actually was. Kudos to Iowa, I guess, you know. They are our neighbors to the west, and it is super lame driving through that state. So I guess, you know, whatever. I don't even know. Okay. So, yeah, we'll just move on. How about that? We just move on. Let's talk about hemp for a little bit. Well, before we talk about hemp, because I like, that's a fun topic. You can go to colememo.com/live now if you'd like to call in. We're taking callers, as they say on talk radio. So let's talk about what the police are lobbying against at the Capitol. And I'm not going to go through this full article. I've talked about this subject here a bit in the past, but Illinois police are advocating for and against bills at the state Capitol on Lobby Day. Now, this story is about 2 weeks old. It shows which bills they're supporting, and it shows which bills they are opposing. And the first bill is one you're probably aware of if you watch this show often or if you read some of my articles. The Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police are opposing Senate Bill 42, which would amend the Illinois Vehicle Code by removing the requirement that cannabis in a motor vehicle must be in an odor-proof container. It would still require that cannabis is stored in a secured, sealed, or resealable child-resistant container, but it would remove that odor-proof container requirement. Law enforcement, as a result, would not be allowed to stop, detain, or search a vehicle based only on the odor of burnt cannabis, as long as the drivers and passengers are 21 years of age or older. That last part is an issue that I have with the bill. The ACLU also has that issue with the bill. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, it's the idea of as long as the drivers and passengers are 21 years of age or older, because first of all, that will just give law enforcement another excuse to pull people over and ID them. Second of all, to hard and fast say that everybody must be 21 years of age or older seems a bit short-sighted. Allow me to elaborate. You do not have to be 21 in the state of Illinois to consume cannabis. There are minors that are registered medical cannabis patients. So I worry a bit about how this would affect them. Would they still be required? It's unclear to me. And for all those reasons, I don't think, I think you could be 21. We could have a 21 requirement for the possession of cannabis, I guess, but I don't know. I am a little bit nervous about that part of the bill. The ACLU has also voiced their concerns, so at least it's not just me that's a little bit concerned with this. Again, I'm not going to go through this whole article, but if you'd like to see the other things that police are supporting and opposing, well, go on over. Well, check out the show notes is what I was about to say. You can also find the show notes at colememo.com. But the easiest way I would say is to just check out the description for this episode, which should have a link that will take you to the show notes. We got lots of comments rolling in, so let's see what people are saying. It looks like somebody made Sloppy Joe. Oh, wait, no. Think a dry Sloppy Joe, no sauce. That is Iowa's culinary contribution to American cuisine. Interesting. Hetty Meds commented and said, passengers are not required to provide ID. Under 21 medical patients aren't allowed to smoke cannabis, only oral edibles and RSO. Very interesting. Yeah, I remember I have thoughts about that, but I won't get into that. That'll just take me off on a whole other tangent. I'm curious what other people know about that subject. If you share the same concerns as me, definitely drop your comments below. It's time that we hash out some hemp. How about that? Does that sound good? I think that sounds fun. How are we going to do this? Well, let's start with this. I thought this was interesting to see. I'm pretty sure Brady Cobb shared this on Twitter, aka X. Yeah, looks like Brady Cobb shared this. I'll try to make this full screen for you folks. So if you're listening right now and you can't see this, this says Curaleaf Clematis, which is in Florida, somewhere in Florida. I'm guessing Clematis. I'm probably saying the town name wrong. I don't know. Curaleaf Clematis has closed its doors to make room for the Hemp Company by Curaleaf. Yes, I think we're reading this right. Curaleaf has closed a dispensary, a marijuana dispensary, to open up a hemp dispensary. And in case people are wondering what the hell I just meant by that, I like to give this background. Hemp and marijuana are two arbitrary legal terms. Hemp is all cannabis with a Delta-9 concentration below 0.3%. And marijuana, legally, is all cannabis with Delta-9 above 0.3%. It's all cannabis, but we've got these silly, arbitrary legal terms, and this is an interesting one. Super interesting to me. Definitely would not have expected look, Curaleaf, and I'll be covering this more here in a second. They're definitely leaning more into hemp, but to shut down a dispensary and then open up, in the same location. I mean, wow. And I mean, look, like as somebody just commented, they said this makes perfect sense. If your goal is to make money, why not? And exactly. I mean, I just had a friend in Florida who was like bummed. He was like, man, I can't get any cannabis down here. I forgot that it's not legal here, at least for adult use. And then he said he walked into a gas station and found plenty of drinks, some that he recognized, thanks to me, because I bring in the hemp drinks every once in a while. And he was like, oh, cool. So I can get high, which is just hilarious because it's like this is filling the gap for Florida tourists, if you will. It's allowing them to acquire cannabis because the state has not delivered with regard to that. Somebody said every business will go to whatever they can to supply the best profit margin, nature of the business. Well, not only that, actually, exactly that. I was about to say not only that, but exactly that. And I mean, if you look at it this way, Curaleaf, as it stood, if they remained Curaleaf Clematis, let's put it this way, okay? If they didn't make this change and they kept this as Curaleaf Clematis instead of the hemp company by Curaleaf, they would not have been able to accept credit cards. They would have been limited on the amount of product that they can sell to their customers. They would not have been able to do 280E deductions on anything related to this store. They would not be able to deliver. I don't think there's delivery in Florida. For all intents and purposes, they could hire a delivery boy on a bicycle. Let's see, I think I already said they can accept credit cards. They can file trademarks, copyright, stuff like that. Stuff that you can't do at a federal level due to marijuana's federal illegality. Somebody just commented taxation and regulations. Yeah, this is a good one. They don't have to pay all the taxes, the business taxes. I mean, 280E in and of itself is sort of a tax, but there's others. There's also really, I don't mean to speak for Florida because I'm not well versed in Florida, but coming from the perspective of Illinois, you have to, as somebody was saying at the beginning of the show, all of the regulations and that you have. Sorry, let me restart that thought. In Illinois, you are required to have cameras. You have to have like a double fucking steel wall vault with your products in it. The cameras have to be a certain spec, which is like super specification, which is super expensive. They have to be wired into the Illinois State Police, some system that they use so that they can watch at all times of day. There are a lot of different regulations that end up being very costly. And if you do something like this, you don't have to deal with that, for better or for worse, maybe, depending on your perspective. Like I say, if I were a cannabis operator, I'd be doing the same thing because, fuck paying 280E, fuck being limited to intrastate commerce. I want to do interstate commerce. I want to send my products through the fucking mail, just like you can with hemp. Like I say, I think these things are good for the consumer, and definitely in many ways good for the business. Another cannabis company that you may have heard of is getting into hemp. Glass House Brands CEO Kyle Kazan. I don't know if I'm saying his last name right. I'm sorry, Kyle. He says they're looking to get into the hemp space, this is not the first time I've heard of them say that. But this is according to their most recent earnings report, I believe. I'll read from this. They say, at the same time, we have obtained our hemp license for Greenhouse 4 and are actively growing and testing hemp-derived cannabis. It's clear that there is massive demand throughout the country, and we are confident that we could sell everything we grow that is 2018 Farm Bill compliant. Wow. Wow. Super interesting to see more people get into hemp. I mean, it just keeps going. We got another story here. Ben Kovler just tweeted that his hemp drinks, I say he just tweeted it, I think he did it last week. His hemp drinks, which you may have seen at your local bar or whatever, it seems like they're everywhere, are now going to be available at Garcia's Chicago, which I believe is a concert venue. So now you can not only get hemp drinks at the Salt Shed, but you can get them at Garcia's Chicago. I mean, look, it's a no-brainer. This is another example of something you can't do with marijuana, quote unquote, but you can do with hemp. Very, very, very interesting. So, we are almost to our last story, which we'll be talking about whether or not your legal weed is filled with poison. Poison? Okay. First of all, though, I just thought, actually, we'll bring this story back up here in a second. So, the industry, the Illinois hemp and cannabis industry, this is an interesting moment where it seems like those two industries are aligned, have concerns about a Senate bill. I believe it's a Senate bill. I'm not sure actually if it's a Senate bill or not, but it's a bill that's being discussed or was being discussed in committee that would put hemp drinks under the regulatory framework, the same regulatory framework as alcohol. Not exactly the same, but under the same umbrella. We'll have people cover this here in a moment. But I just want to back up and say that I recently shared on X and other platforms that according to reporting from Capital Facts, it didn't look likely that anything hemp related would happen this session. And again, that was reporting by Capital Facts. They said it, I shared it, basically what they had said at the time, just to give you a reason, I guess some more details. Apparently a publication claimed that that intoxicating hemp industry advocates are, quote, making a final push this week to iron out language on a regulatory bill ahead of Friday's committee passage deadline, which I believe was Friday the 21st. It might have been the 28th, but I can't remember at this point. In other words, they were just saying that, there's not been a bill that has been introduced that unites the Democratic caucus, and basically they said the air appears to have gone out of this at the moment. And I kind of came away with the understanding that, like I started off with, I came away with the understanding that maybe, just maybe, the status quo of hemp would continue. And it's not sounding like that is the case. First of all, there are, and I just want to share this comment. Someone said, a huge fan of Capital Facts. No one covers Illinois State House like them. Absolutely. And that's why I was so excited when I saw this report, because I'm just a huge fan of the reporting, and it seemed like they were saying that because of this Friday committee deadline, that we wouldn't see any action on hemp. But there was some reporting from Politico that said, despite the Friday committee deadline, it's possible that legislative leaders will work behind the scenes to get consensus on a hemp regulatory bill that could advance later in the session. So there's one piece of reporting that indicated that what I shared maybe wasn't completely accurate. I also listened to this morning Springfield news show, and they had this to say about committee deadlines. Let's listen to the clip.
The chairwoman of the committee, Representative Katie Stewart, who's from the Metro East area, and the governor all say, negotiations will continue. That deadline that you talked about is sometimes observed more in the breach than in obeying it.
Rules are only rules until they're ignored.
Until they're not, yeah. There are all kinds of procedural ways to get around that when budget bills and omnibus bills come up at the end of the session. So it's not dead yet. I used to know an old state senator who said that when he died, he wanted to be buried in the Capitol because nothing ever stayed dead there for very long. So, it could.
So, yeah, there's always a way to get something done in Springfield, right? So I just wanted to kind of correct some information that I've shared in the past. And to that end, as I kind of alluded to before I started that story, I wanted to kind of back up and give kind of a follow-up, if you will, on some information that I've shared in the past. To say that the status quo for hemp will continue for the foreseeable future is not true, because I think just today I read of a local ban passing in Elgin. I've heard of several other local bans passing. So, I guess that was kind of part of the status quo anyways. In other words, localities, of course, and I think they should have the ability. I know this may surprise you to hear from me, but I believe localities should have the ability to make these decisions. If they want to ban hemp, let them ban hemp. You know what else localities have voted to not allow in the past? I'll give you a hint. Naperville, I think for like the first year or so of adult use cannabis, voted to not allow dispensaries in their town. I believe they ended up reversing that decision, and now they do, and maybe now they do allow, and maybe now they even have a dispensary in their town. I think localities should have the ability to make these decisions. And so, if this is what they want to do. But again, it sounds like other hemp bills could move in the future, including a highly restrictive one, which would essentially just say that you can't sell any cannabis unless you have a marijuana license in the state of Illinois. It doesn't matter if it's marijuana or hemp. If it's from the cannabis plant, you must be licensed under the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act. I'm sure we'll see some language like that crop up again. It was pushed by majority leader. I don't know what her title is, but she's definitely a senator. Her name is Lightford, Senator Lightford. I don't know why I am Kimberly Lightford. Not sure why I was blanking on the name there. But I'm sure we'll see her bill and language similar to that come back around. But in the meantime, we've already seen a hemp bill come back. And as I started this whole tangent off with, I'm seeing opposition from both people in hemp and people in the legal marijuana industry. So let's watch some coverage from Illinois in Focus Daily, which I believe is affiliated with the Center Square. Let's check out this story. And then we'll move on to our last story, which is about poison being in your legal marijuana. Here we go.
But one thing that really took a lot of attention was the idea of regulating hemp-infused intoxicating beverages. All right, so Illinois legalized medicinal marijuana. Gosh, what was that? A decade plus ago. And then in 2019, they legalized recreational marijuana. And then you had the U.S. Farm Bill, I believe this was 2018, essentially allow for industrial hemp to be produced. And that opened up the gates to allow for people to grow hemp and find different types of products. You can make textiles and fabrics and oils and all kinds of stuff. Feed for livestock, but you can also make smokable hemp, and people are even driving things like Delta 8 and Delta 9, I think, is that what it is? But there's also concerns about how these hemp products are getting into convenience stores and being being labeled like candy, and some kids getting their hands on it. And some of these hemp products, while it might be low THC, it still has some intoxicating qualities to it. So they're wanting to try to regulate this, especially as more and more you have a focus on different types of hemp products like hemp-infused beverages. State Senator Bill Cunningham saying that this is an issue that needs to be addressed as the popularity of these products grows and grows.
We're anxious to get input from other stakeholder groups within this space, and we are open to making modifications to the bill. But I think it's time that this form of beverage be entered into the regulatory space, and we think this is a good way to do it.
So he wants to have some regulation. Now, they tried bringing this up last year, but there was a lot of consternation, good word for you, a lot of conflict in the House. And there were even stories that when the governor, who supports this type of legislation, tried to send his staff to go talk to a House Democratic caucus, it would turn into a yelling match. And a lot of the black caucus opposing these regulations on hemp because the hemp industry is saying, hey, we can't get into the legal marijuana business because it's so expensive. The regulations are over the top. It's really only allowed for the big conglomerates to be able to come in and buy out smaller operations. So the hemp industry is something that minority communities are able to get into and to thrive. And if they have more regulations, it's going to make it that much more difficult. So Justin Ward of the Illinois Healthy Alternatives Association, also a farmer, he discussed how these types of regulations on the hemp industry are really going to hurt and possibly impact the economy in a negative way.
We strongly oppose the proposed three-tier system included in the bill, which would prevent hemp producers from selling directly to consumers. This system mirrors that of alcohol and would force small hemp businesses to rely on distributors, effectively limiting their market access. For small businesses like those in our association, this would be a major obstacle. The ability to engage directly with consumers has been a critical part of our growth and success.
This is how to get in shape fast.
If you want to drop, right, let's take that ad off. These people think they're going to get free advertising off my podcast. So hold on just a second. Let's get this back up here. Sorry about that, folks. Here we go.
So obviously, some of the regulations that are being proposed here, limiting or having them go through the Department of Natural Resources, the Department of Ag, and elsewhere, testing products and having a variety of different types of hoops they got to jump through. Clearly, when it comes to growing hemp, they have to have checks. And one of the commenters does point out that you have to have a license to grow hemp in the state. True, and they do come out and they test the hemp products. They test the hemp products for certain levels of THC, and if there's just a notch above that certain level allowed, then you got to destroy all the hemp. But still, you have hemp thriving in Illinois when it comes to the production of it. But more regulations would do more impact. So all of this obviously is an ongoing conversation, something that we'll likely hear a lot more about as we get closer to the tail end of session, and we'll keep you posted here with Illinois.
All right, and I just want to say once again, that is Illinois in Focus Daily. They do a daily show, as you might be able to imagine, that goes live on YouTube via the Center Square, and I highly recommend checking it out. There's a lot of good things going on, a lot of good reporting going on there. It allows you to know what all is going on at the Capitol. So I think it's about time we transition into our headline stories, which is regarding the safety, how do you say that? Purported? I don't know. Everybody assumes legal weed is safe, right? Is that a safe assumption? I don't know. It doesn't seem like it. We'll get to that here in just a moment. Somebody had a really brilliant comment that I just wanted to highlight here. They say, the question comes down to whether there is more revenue and taxes in a restricted, limited license market, or is there more revenue for the state if we allow the above-board sale of cannabis by anyone? And I think you're absolutely right on the dot, Even though I disagree, and I can explain, even though the foundation of what I'm about to say I disagree with, I'm going to say it because I think this person just brought up a really brilliant point. if you compare Michigan sales to Illinois sales for the past 5 years, they have blown us out of the water. And that's despite the fact, as we read earlier, their prices are some of the lowest in the nation. You'd think with us having some of the highest prices in the nation, we would be getting the most revenue, right? Wrong. Again, look it up. The last 5 years, Michigan has blown us out of the water. They've been selling more cannabis than us, making more money on revenue selling cannabis than us. And again, that's despite the fact that the prices are so fucking low. People are just buying it. But to this commenter's point, if you look at the amount of taxes we've gotten and compare those figures over the last 5 years, I believe we consistently get more taxes because we're taxing the products higher, right? So it's a fair point. And, if you look at this from the state's perspective, they've always looked at this as a revenue issue instead of a social justice issue or an issue regarding our rights as people. And this is where my disagreement with, even though you're absolutely correct, and I think that's how the state looks at it, I just have a problem with the state looking at it this way because, and it's something I cover in my mini documentary, which you can watch now at colememo.com/minidoc. To me, this issue was never about bringing in revenue from the state. This issue is never about protecting licensed operators. This issue, the legalization of cannabis, is supposed to be, in my opinion, focused on decriminalizing the purchase, sale, possession, use, cultivation, etc. of cannabis. And it seems like we are not doing that in the name, again, of protecting operators, in the name of protecting tax revenue. And it's but this was about protecting an individual's rights. And yeah, I don't know if I'm just too idealistic, too optimistic, or what, but it's just really disheartening. And I want to say, this person commented again, I said, I personally agree with you, but the state cares about revenue. Absolutely. You're right. And I know you agree with me. I know most people would. But I just wanted to say that out loud for the people that might be confused when I say I'm frustrated. I'm, all of these things. I wanted to make sure people understood what I meant. And it is what it is. Like you say, the state cares about revenue first and foremost, and that is just what it is. Okay, we're going to move into our final stories, which has to do with the safety of legal weed. Before I do that, one more teaser. Somebody said, I'm about to make pizza dough. When are you going to come and eat some pizza, Cole? God damn it. Why'd you have to bring up pizza right now? I am hungry. I want some pizza. Pizza is amazing. It's my favorite. Okay, so many people assume that legal weed is safe, right? Well, as we've covered in the past, and I'll flash this up on my screen here, and this link will be in the show notes if you guys want to check out this episode. This is an old episode I did with some journalists from the Chicago Sun-Times. The headline of their story is, What's in Illinois Legal Weed? Sometimes contaminants, Sun-Times testing finds. That was hard to get out of my mouth. Check out that episode. This is an investigation that journalists have done within the state of Illinois in the past, where they bought cannabis from a legal dispensary and tested it to see what was in it. And they found, I think 7 of the 9 or 8 of the 9 pre-rolls did not pass testing, which is interesting to say the least. We'll be covering 2 more stories after this, including highlights from an interview that I saw with an investigative journalist that actually talks about poison being in legal weed. So my YouTube title was not clickbaity. We will be talking about legitimate poison being in weed here in a moment, but similar story here from Looks like this story was published March 17th, 2025. New Jersey Cannabis fails safety test. Consumer group fines. And apparently weed sold at New Jersey dispensaries from 17 cultivators and manufacturers did not meet state safety standards for things such as mold and accurate labeling, according to a consumer advocacy group that teamed up with a lab to test products. Looks like this article has a paywall on it, so I'm sorry. I'll have the link in the show notes so that you can read it yourself. But it looks like they start to say, cannabis products are tested before they reach store shelves. The consumer advocacy group SafeLeaf worked with an accredited testing lab and retested weed sold at dispensaries. The results showed that nearly 30% of tested products failed and exceeded limits for harmful microbes. It looks like the lab also tested 25 pre-rolls from 17 different cultivators and manufacturers. They had problems when it came to accurate labeling of THC levels. So I want to see more of this. I want to that's why I'm sharing this. I would like to see more secret shopper audits, if you will, of these products, because it's obvious after seeing just a few of these, and I'm sure there are more of these, that the safety of these products is questionable. First of all, I don't think smoking anything is safe, but I'm just saying these products are labeled, they're tested, and it's all meant to give you this impression that you're not smoking moldy weed, that you are smoking something or consuming something that's labeled accurately. And every time an audit like this happens, it seems like that's not the case. And I just wonder, would this be acceptable with anything else in our consumable chain of custody? I don't even know what the words I'm looking for, but like if you went and tested a Coca-Cola, just to give a random example, and it didn't have what it said it had in it, that seems like it'd be pretty concerning. And that seems like a pretty regular finding from things like this. So, yeah. Super, super interesting to see. I'm curious what you all think about this. Again, we are live on the air, so drop your comments below. You can also call in at colememo.com/live. And let's talk about our last story here. So the last story, I'm going to share highlights from an interview that I watched with an investigative reporter. Her name is Paige St. John, and they did something similar where they kind of anonymously tested cannabis products. And, well, let's just watch this, and I'll pause it from time to time as we go through this. I'll also have this full interview linked in the show notes. Let me see what this show is from. I can't remember. It's Adam Conover. I don't know what his show is actually. Oh, it's called Factually with Adam Conover. And the headline is Your Legal Weed is Full of Poison with Paige St. John. So once again, I did not just put that in my YouTube title to be clickbaity. Here we go. Let's watch some highlights from this awesome interview.
And this is a national issue. It's not the weed that's the issue, right? It's the derivatives in the products that are being made, such as distillates that are used for vaping. And what we found, just in a nutshell, is that when with legalization came this runaway market, everybody who could was growing in large quantities and began just using pesticides, commercial chemicals out the wazoo for this intense cultivation, trying to squeeze 3, 4, 5 crops out of a single year. And when you take that cannabis, you shouldn't smoke it as is when it's been sprayed with stuff like that. But when you distill it down, make vaping products, you wind up concentrating the harmful pesticides.
Wow.
Carcinogens, endocrine disruptors, chemicals known to affect your intelligence, your fertility, cause birth deformities and neurologic damage that will haunt you then, with Parkinson's and things like that. And that stuff is showing up in pretty large quantities in the supply chain, whether
Really?
it's the legal market or the illegal market. To me, it's one market, and that's what we found.
But it's showing up in both legal and illegal weed
yes.
in California. What this is your investigation. What did you find in terms of the amounts that were present?
Right. So we found levels of some chemicals at a point where you would feel it, whether it's burning in the throat, coughing, burning eyes, so irritation in the lungs. We even some of the rolling papers were contaminated with, an ingredient in the original disinfectant Lysol.
Wow.
Just really screaming high levels in some of the rolling papers on some of the top shelf cannabis brands. But for the pesticides and stuff like that, the majority of the stuff we found is at a threshold where you're not going to notice the effects right away. And when they do appear, you may not know the cause. Things that a decade, later may show up. And we're already living with that. We live with pesticides in our food supply and around us, and we're already seeing the effects. Study, for instance, of people living in the Central Valley in California and the high rates of Parkinson's disease, that has been tied and associated with pesticide use.
Wow.
So, but then you add cannabis on top of that, and you have reason for concern.
Well, as you say, pesticides are a part of, our food system as well. Is it worse in the cannabis industry than in the food system?
Well, here's why it's worse. Because when we published this, I got a lot of pushback from people who said, yeah, but my Cheerios has more of this or that. Well, no. The levels we were finding exceeded what are allowed in most food products. But 2, you're not smoking your Cheerios.
So, super interesting stuff. We're going to continue watching that here in just a moment. But I'm just curious, what do you think? We're watching it. We are live. So if you want to call in, colememo.com/live, drop a comment below. We can display it on screen. And like Genetic Memory Farms just said, hit that thumbs up button if you haven't already. I definitely would appreciate any support that you're able to throw my way, and that's one of the best ways to support is by smashing that like button, sharing it with your friends, or going to colememo.com/support. Would definitely appreciate it. Let's pick back up with where we left off here in this interesting interview.
Cheerios.
Well, after legalization, did the weed get better or worse?
It only got different. And this is an interesting finding because the belief, we ran these stories out over the course of the year. And in the first stories in June, we just tested legal products. And then in the results that we got in December, and we put all of the results up. You can look up, you don't have to go to our paywall. It's up on GitHub if you want. But if you go to the LA Times site, you've got like 598 different products that we've tested. And you can look and see, including some of the popular illicit brands. And I think the contamination rate's about the same. But what we found is that the illicit products had chemicals that are easy to spot by the labs, but it's on the state list of 66 chemicals, and they're easy to find in the labs and blow the whistle. The legal weed, a third of it had a chemical that's not on the state list, and pymetrozine, and it just looked to me as though growers had just simply switched when they knew the state was looking for something on the 66 level list. They went to products that were not. That
well,
wouldn't
yeah,
get caught.
Of course they would, right? There's something that's on the banned list, and so
yeah, and the aphids don't care. I mean, you need something to kill the aphids, and the aphid when cultivation took off, like over in on the coast area, there was so much cannabis cultivation. The aphids were having a heyday. There was like weed everywhere, and so the population just was out of control, and it became a real problem for the farmers, because these are just farmers, and they looked for a product that was good, that wasn't on the late state ban list, and so they reached for these other products. It's a felony to use those other products, but they were using it so frequently, they were actually reporting the use to the state, and the state wasn't noticing.
Wait, sorry, hold on. It's a felony.
Yeah.
But they were using it.
Yeah.
One of the chemicals on the list.
No, it wasn't on the list. Pymetrozine. So pymetrozine is
okay, I
not
see.
on the list of 66, but under federal law, it is a felony to use a controlled pesticide in a way that's not been approved. And this is a restricted pesticide, pymetrozine. It's not like there are some general use things anybody can use on anything, right? And people around the house. Neem oil, a lot of the organic things, for instance, are in that category. But pymetrozine is not. In fact, pymetrozine is banned in many countries, and it's still used heavily in the United States legally, like on potatoes. You're not smoking your potatoes either, I hope.
So yeah, super interesting interview. I'm gonna keep going. I'm just showing you some highlights that I found to be interesting. Once again, though, if you'd like to check out this full episode without just the highlights, you can definitely do that. I'll have it linked in the show notes. We're about to get to something that's a little bit Illinois relevant. I mean, this is relevant to all states. You know, California is often seen as a leader with regard to cannabis policy. But yeah, I just wanted to pause for a moment to kind of underline what they're saying. So it's like the state comes up with a list of of pesticides you shouldn't use. And what she's saying she noticed is that the illicit market, for lack of better words, was using pesticides from that list, and as a result, they were easily identifiable. But some of the state operators had found other pesticides that were just simply not on the list and maybe not as easily identifiable. And that's a scary thought. And somebody said, but I am cooking my potatoes. That's a good question there. I don't know. I don't know how that relates. This is a solid question. I don't know how this relates to this pesticide being allowed to be used on potatoes. Good ears there, because now that you say that, I wonder the same thing. I don't really know. So somebody else said, I've always wondered how different test results would be for products coming from the dispensary, and they say they're finding this stuff very interesting. So yeah, I got to agree, and let's continue this, because there's more that I found super interesting on this interview. Let's check it out.
So
why are these chemicals not on the list? I mean, surely when California put the list together, there was some criteria that they used. Do some folks think that these chemicals are not as big a concern, or what?
No, you wish. No, the history, it turned out, is that state pesticide regulators were asked early on, make some recommendations to the cannabis regulators. What should we look for? We don't want to have too many things on the list, because that will be too hard or too expensive. So they copied the list from Oregon, because that's got a long growing history and was in the game before California was in terms of legal weed, and looked around at other states. And that's pretty much the list that they started with, things that other people were looking for and had found. Not until, and then in the ensuing years, the pesticide regulators again and again said, we ought to revisit that list. And cannabis regulators ignored them. And until we published our findings, nobody revisited the list. There is now a new proposed list. They're going to add 10 more chemicals. That's the suggestion at this point. to the watch list, but not everything that we found, and they're leaving some important things off. We found smuggled pesticides from China that are carbamates that are highly toxic, and those are not all on the list. For instance, on the proposed list,
there's smuggled pesticides from China.
Yeah, these are carbamates that are not in use in the United States.
What is a carbamate?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a chemical term. I'm trying to think of some of the known carbamates, some of the worst, nasty pesticides from the 1960s that we got rid of. Those are carbamates.
Okay, so it's a classification of chemicals, some of which is used as pesticides. Okay, thank you.
Right, and it's a class that can kill you. And
got it.
The nice thing about the carbamates, if there is a nice thing, is that you can recover if you catch it soon enough with blood tests. So here's a catch about protecting public safety in weed. Our regulators, our law enforcement people knew they were encountering this in the field when they were doing slash and burn operations on illegal grows. So they were finding these chemicals in use on many of these illicit operations in Northern California, in the high desert, over in San Bernardino, and those areas, in the warehouse grows in Oakland. It's like all over the state, the stuff is popping up. So they begin or continue doing blood testing to make sure that they're not that the law enforcement officers on the raids are not accumulating toxic levels of carbamates in the system. No word to the public, no warning.
Wow.
No, and some of these growers that they shut down, they knew were selling into the legal market, which is why for me, it's not that there's a black market and a legal market or an illicit market. It's all one market. You see stuff moving in and out so much back and forth that in people are still buying on the street.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Well, people are buying in both markets, and I think that have you seen, now that these reports of yours have been blockbusters, especially in the cannabis industry, have you seen a response from the government, from the state regulators about this?
Yeah. Oh, well, they won't talk to me, so there's that response.
But are they changing their ways at all? Is there any improvement?
They are, absolutely. So the cannabis czar has told lawmakers in the state that this is stuff that they were intending to do already and had already in the works to do for months. They had told me the same thing a year ago, that they were going to look at a new list of what chemicals to test for instance. The problem is that a year passed and that didn't happen. And here we are in December and it still hasn't, or January, and it still hasn't happened. It's the slowness at which state government is moving. Private industry can move at lightning speed compared to regulators. And so I don't know where we will, if we were a year from now, still be in the same place. And if they make a new list, if it takes them a year to add 10 chemicals to the list, well, what are the next 10 chemicals going to be? Yeah. So until they get a same kind of program that they have for food, where they do, they shop in stores, they go to dispensaries, pull products off the shelf and test them and see what's there and independently double check. But when we started the reporting on this, the state cannabis division didn't have a lab of its own that could test for pesticides. Wow. Though it had spent millions of dollars to set one up. They are now borrowing the resources of other state agencies, which means those state agencies can't do their job to look for harmful chemicals in other products. So it's going to take more resosis, I think.
Are there other states that are doing it better?
In terms of looking for pesticides, are other states doing better? No, I don't think so. I think these stories are a wake-up call for cannabis across the nation. I've had requests, coming in from other states, to talk about this.
It is
but other states are setting up their own independent labs. I think they're ahead of California in doing that.
It is a wake.
So other states are setting up their own independent labs, and I will acknowledge some of the comments that came in here in just a moment. But just wanted to give a quick plug for some of my work. I've tried to cover this story quite a while. The state of Illinois is looking to create their own lab. I've written a few different articles on the subject. So if you go to colememo.com, I searched up the word lab. You can see the Illinois Bureau of Cannabis Testing is focused exclusively on getting the lab open for state testing. Also, I wrote an article about how it's nearing completion. So, we will we'll see what that turns into. I also did an interview with, and you can see this, it's episode 59, with Dr. Bob Miller, who talked about how in some ways, Illinois cannabis testing regulations are so strict that it's causing non-compliance. So again, the question is your legal weed safe? I guess that depends on what your definition of safe is. Again, I'm of the belief that smoking anything is probably not the most safe activity to engage in. If you want to make some comparisons, people do this all the time. They'll say, well, cannabis isn't as dangerous as alcohol. Okay, I guess we can make that comparison if you want to. I don't really have any strong feelings about the safety or lack thereof of cannabis. Frankly, this is what I always say. I've been smoking untested weed for longer than I've been smoking tested weed. And I always thought the whole argument was that, yeah, cannabis is relatively harmless. Now, some of these findings are they sound scary. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know everything about everything that was shared. Somebody asked, and please get your comments in. We're about to wrap the show. We're just got one other topic that I think I'll cover before I end the live stream. But somebody's asking, so is she arguing that all pesticides are bad? We use pesticides to grow things. That's why the organic farming market niche exists. And no, I don't think she's saying that. And in fact, let me see if I can find this really quick. She does say, just paraphrasing here, because I'm not sure I'm going to be able to find it because I didn't have this ready to go. The question was, okay, what can we do? You just shared a lot of scary sounding information, Paige St. John, which is the name of the journalist. What can we do? Oh, here we go. I think I just found it. Let's watch this highlight because I don't know that that's what she's saying. I'll have to do some more research and rewatch that episode to kind of get a better sense to know that, to have a better feeling on what she is saying. But some of the people that are tuning in right now might be wondering, does she have any advice in terms of how should we proceed given this information? While we're watching this, feel free to comment below. We can display your comment. You can also call in live at colememo.com/live. Tell us what you think about it. Let's watch her answer to what should we do about this.
It'll be a little bit better. In the meantime, though, I'm sure there's folks listening who, in whatever state they live in, are legal weed users, as am I. How are there any practices that you suggest they can use to keep themselves as safe as possible in the meantime, other than abstaining entirely? Because of course that's the safest thing to do. But look, we all got to wind down at the end of the day, Paige.
Yeah. No, there are definitely things people can do. They can be aware of what they're buying, and they can look for, distillate. That term tends to cover the dirtiest bulk processed kind of oil, but there are other products out there that are that use vape still that are safer, and they can look for products that have been certified as either organic or there's a Cat 4 phrase.
So that sounds like it kind of answered the question that somebody had. Is she saying, no pesticides? That's why an organic niche has been created or exists. So maybe, if you can find some cannabis that is organic or like organic, because I don't think technically you can classify cannabis as organic because that's a federal definition. But she's about to say some other standards, which I don't know if they exist in Illinois or other states, but I'm going to let her pick up where she left off on this comment.
Or there's a Cat 4 phrase that it used to be called the LA Times 9 and now it's called Cat 4, but it's essentially product that's been tested for the pesticides that we found. And Cat 4 is short for Category 4 because the state only went up to Category 3. So it means one level higher than the state requires. And there are now products on the shelf that have Cat 4, sticker or label, or maybe your bud tender knows about it and can tell you. One thing you should do is just get in the practice of it when you're buying, ask for a copy of the COA, and that is the testing certificate. It's required of every legal cannabis product. And I like the COA not because it'll tell you, yes, it's safe, it doesn't have any pesticides, but it'll actually tell you where the weed came from up in the top corner. And so you get past that brand name like Backpack Boys and you start to know a little bit more about who actually made this.
I like that. So you ask for the COA, look for organic. That's a label that's worth looking for and is meaningful.
Certified. Yeah. California has organic is a federal word. So I think it's called like organic or something like that, because you can't use the federal word on the not federal plant. But there's a California label. There's Clean Green certified. There's Eco certified. There's some of these private certification programs now. But to the consumer, if they think organic, they'll know it when they see it.
I hate to ask, are you yourself a cannabis user, knowing what?
So, again, I'll have that full interview linked in the show notes if you're wanting to check it out. One of the things she did say does apply to Illinois. I'm curious to know, before we wrap, please comment what your experience with this has been, because I've heard different experiences. I've just heard different experiences across the board. I've not heard of consistent experiences with regard to what I'm about to share. So technically speaking, let's make this full screen here, and I'll read it just in case you can't. A cultivation center, craft grower, and this is from, before I read this, I'll just say this is from Illinois cannabis law. A cultivation center, craft grower, and infuser shall provide to a dispensing organization the laboratory test results for each batch of cannabis product purchased by the dispensing organization, if sampled. I don't know what that means, if sampled. Each dispensing organization must have those laboratory results available upon request to purchasers. That's the part that I am thinking about. Each dispensing organization must have those laboratory results available upon request to purchasers. Now, what I've heard that's been all over the map is that, I'm just doing other searches of upon request. I'm past my threshold here. What I have heard from people that have asked about this is that they've asked for a copy of the lab results and they've not been given lab results, or they've been told that the dispensary doesn't have lab results. Have you done this? I personally do not shop at Illinois dispensaries often. I'm just curious, what your experience has been. An industry worker just commented and said, the COA is digitally attached to the order to the dispo. So yeah, you'd think they'd be able to print it off. And I don't know. I'm just curious. Has anybody ever tried this? Have you ever tried to ask for a COA in Illinois dispensaries? Because it sounds like in almost every state you should be provided one upon request. And according to how this law reads, and I'm not a lawyer, but this reads in pretty plain English. Each dispensing organization must have those laboratory results available upon request to purchasers. So it would seem that you should be able to. And this is an interesting comment we just got in. Somebody said, in my time behind the counter, not one customer asked for a COA. Wow, that's super interesting. That is super interesting. There's so much talk about the fake COAs in hemp, and it's interesting to hear that people that purchase cannabis from a dispensary often don't even ask. I mean, I even said myself that I've never asked, so I'm not holier than thou by any means, but Yeah, just an interesting thought there. I'm curious what you all think about that. Once again, that interview was with Paige St. John. If you want to look it up, it's on Factually by Adam Conover. I thought it was a super, super interesting interview, and the findings sounded interesting. And one thought that she said, while it does sound like Illinois is ahead of the curve with regard to making a state-based cannabis testing lab, it sounded like from her perspective, there aren't any states that are really doing it right with regard to detecting pesticides, which is scary, to say the least. Very, very scary. So, again, curious what you all think about this. I definitely found all of this super interesting. I hope you did too. Yeah, well, it is Monday, so I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're all having a great week so far. I know it's a little bit early to call it a great week, but we just got another comment. Make sure to keep the comments coming in. People don't want to be a bother and ask. Yep, absolutely. I agree with that. I've heard dispos tell people to email about it. I'd think you'd have better luck with an email direct to the manufacturer. Yeah, and I'm curious if you disagree with what I'm about to say. If you were to reach out to the manufacturer, be sure to mention the dispensary you went to, and maybe even send some information to the seed to sale label so that manufacturer can be sure to get you the correct COA. Depending on the product, depending on where you're at. Like, I don't know, I'm just trying to make the manufacturer's job easier, and your process of requesting that information smoother. They said, yes, much needed info. Yeah, so be sure to provide the dispensary you got it from, that seed to sale tracking number. Any and all information you can provide will make, I'm sure, the process just a little bit easier. So help them help you is the saying, I believe. People assume if it is a dispo, it is clean and tested. P.T. Barnum said, there is one born every minute. Yep. And that's kind of that's the whole reason I wanted to talk about this. And if you go back and read that Chicago Sun-Times story that I wrote about earlier, where they went to dispensaries and tested product and found that the products weren't what they said they were, just to put it shortly. You'll see, I think, in the first article in the series that they wrote, that they actually quoted me saying basically exactly kind of what that comment was just saying, which is that, I always told people that if you're worried about safety or whatever else, just go to the dispensary. But I think I said at the time, and this is the quote that they featured, but these results give me pause. I don't feel like I can confidently say that anymore. And as more and more information like this comes up, you hear about lab inflation all the time. In other words, labs inflating the THC percentage because a lot of consumers purchase based off of THC percentage. You hear about lab shopping, which is close to lab inflation. They kind of go hand in hand. It's the idea that you shop around for the most favorable results, whether that be high THC or say that we passed. I don't know. There are different ways. You hear about this. It's not unique to Illinois. It happens in every state. And for all those reasons, I'm not saying cannabis testing is worthless. That's not what I'm saying. Sometimes people take me the wrong way when I talk about this. They take it as if I'm like sharing these stories and I'm like, checkmate, cannabis advocates of cannabis testing. No. I wish that I could confidently say this product is tested, labeled accurately, and it's as safe to consume as anything else you might be smoking, right? It's as safe as insert product here. But when you see stories like this, I hesitate to say that because that just doesn't seem to be the case. So I want to acknowledge a few more comments. Oh, snap. My friend Mike commented. We'll get to that comment here in just a second. Satisfied Mind says, the COA should be public for all products. It'd be relatively easy. Absolutely. Put a QR code on those products. Mike G to God says most people have no idea COAs exist. And that's a really good point. I mean, in what other facet of your life do you purchase something and, you know, you're purchasing vegetables or meat or whatever, and you're like, you got a certificate of analysis? You know, like, yeah, I feel like the only aspect in which people might be familiar with COAs is if they buy like those fucking, this is a joke for Mike, if they buy those Trump coins off of the internet, you know, those like TV salesmen that sell those like bullshit ass coins, sometimes with like the Bible on them, sometimes with Trump. And with this, you'll receive a COA, a certificate of authenticity. So anyways, that's just me being stupid. Somebody said, Genetic Memory Farm said, I wish the Sun-Times would redo that article every 6 months. Yeah, I do too. I wish the Sun-Times, I don't even know if they report on cannabis anymore. And if they do, I don't know. Like, I don't think they have beat reporters on cannabis anymore. I could be wrong on that, and I hope I am. But, you know, I don't know. If you know more than me, somebody on Instagram said the Haktua coin. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, if you've been watching on Instagram, I apologize. I see these comments way later than the folks that are commenting on YouTube and everything else. Instagram comments don't come in. I can't like display them like I'm displaying this comment from my friend Mike. So I apologize if I missed your comments. If you tuned in from Instagram, I just want to thank all of you for tuning in today, and I hope that you enjoyed this episode of The Cole Memo, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Take care.
Beginning January 1st, 2020, the recreational use of cannabis will be legal in the state of Illinois.
Available to stream now, my mini doc dives into the history of Illinois legalization, starting with
January 1st. What should we expect? The biggest thing that we need people to understand is that January 1, in terms of the criminal justice system here in this state, is the end of prohibition.
See how Illinois missed its chance at real cannabis reform with key failures, including the fact that
the program includes regulation on possession limits.
So people can still be arrested for a possession.
And I want to highlight that in its first year of legalized recreational marijuana in the state of Illinois, they arrested 3 times as many black people for possession than any other race.
We've run into so much cannabis, we've run out of places to put it.
I have represented people and taken their cases through the court system who got charged with more serious crimes only because the police said that they smelled cannabis. And not because the police said you have illegal cannabis, or not because you have too much cannabis, or not because you're high on cannabis, but because I can smell it and that's it.
Attorney goes, he understands that he can't be smoking and his cannabis flower shouldn't be open. And I was like, I'd like to say for the record that I was not smoking and my flower was not open.
So that's where we're at right now in Illinois.
Yeah.
And I hope it changes.
Start watching now at colememo.com/minidoc.